Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of the Niche Cache Variety Show, where we get a bit funky, get a bit weird, and just devour the absolute Aotearoa sporting buffet that we have at the moment. Busy times, hectic times, but glorious Aotearoa sporting times, and we are here to just do whatever the fuck we want, to be honest. We don't care. We're from the Niche Cache, the niche-cache.com. Big Aotearoa sporting yarns are to be found on our website. So if you love Aotearoa sport in the same way we love Aotearoa sport, make sure you're checking out our website, the niche-cache.com. Check in every day, bookmark it, or just pop in a couple of times a week and you'll find some fresh yarns to enjoy, learn, and just pass time. Like if that's what you need to do, if you're on your phone waiting for a doctor's appointment, maybe you're doing a number 2 and you just need something to read, the niche-cache.com is there for you at all times, representing Aotearoa to the fullest. We recorded a Patreon podcast prior to this variety show, so big it up to the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/our niche cache. That is the best way to support the Niche Cache and all our content. And we always try to do an extra podcast there for the Patreon whānau every week. We did zone in on some Aotearoa cricketing matters, but we also had a little kōrero about the Commonwealth Games and just all the logistics of trying to cover Aotearoa sport in this current climate. Climate sounds a bit political. And the current landscape also sounds a bit, political as well. I don't know. Just we love Aotearoa sport. Yeah, busy winter phase.
Yeah.
Busy Matariki shadow. Let's keep it grounded to Aotearoa. It's a bit of, we're still in the Matariki shadow, the darkness of Matariki. We're coming out of it. We're coming into a new year. Happy to be here. Shout out to life. Shout out to the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/our niche cache. Best way to support us. And is we always try to do an extra podcast. You don't need to care about that podcast. You can just support us straight up the guts. That's more than welcome. But there's always an extra podcast there as every week as well. And of course, low-key banger, the email dispatch, email newsletter, the nichecache.substack.com. We send that out every Monday and Friday evening. If you're checking the website and listening to the podcast and you're enjoying the content, but you're not signed up to the email newsletter, you're missing out. That's a mandatory sign up. We send out all our Niche Cache content to your email inbox so you can get off social media. You don't need to scroll through anything. You can just get all the Niche Cache content delivered to you. But there's also extra yarns about Aotearoa sport every Monday and Friday evening. Always there for you. Always serving up some content and kind of a mandatory sign up at this point. We enjoy doing it and it's great value as well. We start our podcast with a dose of mindfulness wildcard. You had the COVID there for a week, so I'm curious what you dove into as far as mindfulness goes.
Yeah, I should have kept a notebook or something because I definitely had time to get through a lot more like podcasts and books and stuff than I would, or just like, to be honest, where a lot of this stuff comes from. Deep dive Wikipedia searches is always a handy one as well. I should have kept like a running notebook and I could have had like mindfulness for the next 6 months all sorted. But this one is from what would we call him? Philosopher psychiatrist, maybe Carl Jung, who said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell."
Bit of yin yang,
for sure.
Bit of darkness and the light. Roots are always underestimated, in the value of plants and nature. Everyone looks at the above ground matters, and they might only care about the roots when the roots are fucking up their driveway, getting in the way, causing niggly roots popping out of the ground. But obviously hugely important, and having those roots is your tūranga waiwai as well. But what you're referring to is that the roots need to get down to hell to really grow a tall tree, to grow a big old Cody tree, which to me means you got to flirt with a bit of the darkness to really get into the light.
Yeah, and on like a nice metaphorical sense, it sort of seems to say like you don't well, let's put it in like a sporting contest. Like you don't achieve greatness as an athlete unless you've been through the struggle, like that kind of thing. Like you can't have the good without also experiencing the bad. It's one of them, like it's not just that they're opposites, and that opposites are related. It's that like the something I always kind of come back to is like the opposites are the same thing. Like it's a singular scale. You one is like a measurement of the other. Like light is just a lack of darkness, and darkness is a lack of light, kind of thing. Like they're not separate things. They're specifically related to one another, and therefore you can't have one without also having the other. And if you want your tree to reach all the way up to heaven, you're going to have those roots that dip all the way down into hell. Like it doesn't necessarily mean specifically as a tree, but on a metaphorical sense, you reach one way, you have to reach the other way as well. Like it's equal and it's opposite, and it's the same.
Let's crack into some sports wildcard. What are you going to serve up first of all in our hot take segment?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty to choose from. A lot of good com game stuff going on. Not to mention some Blackcaps activities. Heaps of good football matters. NRL is going bonkers at the moment. Like, there's so much going on. But I think the most underrated Kiwi sports story of the last couple of weeks is the Tall Blacks sending a developmental roster to the Asia Cup and coming back with third place finish. I think that's just an outstanding effort from them that has not gotten anywhere near the recognition it deserves. And you think about like that squad that they sent, 10 of the 12 players that were there had 5 or fewer caps going into that tournament. 4 players were uncapped entirely. The oldest player, Toy Smith-Milner, was 26 years old. 5 of the guys in that 12-man squad were 22 or younger. 4 of them still at college in the USA. It was a raw squad. It was a fresh squad. It was also a squad just like chock full of potential. Smoked India in game 1, lost to Lebanon in game 2, but then claimed must win over Philippines to advance to a play-in game against Syria, where they absolutely destroyed them. Into the quarterfinals, where a Flynn Cameron banger knocked out South Korea, who were the team that had beaten them twice at the previous Asia Cup. The first time the Tall Blacks were invited there, lost to South Korea in the group stage, lost to South Korea in the semi-finals, I think, as well. Beat them here in the quarters to advance into the semis, where they lost to Australia in a good close game. Like they battled pretty well, and kept themselves in the game, going relatively deep into that one. But then rallied hard in the fourth quarter of their third place playoff on the back of just an absolute flurry of Toy Smith-Milner 3-pointers to beat Jordan and claim bronze, their best ever finish at an Asia Cup. Having been fourth place last time with what was just like ostensibly a much stronger squad that they sent over there. The 2 teams that beat them, Lebanon and Australia, they were the finalists. So the only teams that finished above them were the only teams that beat them. Pretty much just one more example of Aotearoa basketball flying off the leash. Can't be contained. The sport's in a good place right now.
Aotearoa basketball, bit of a Jonah Lomu. They just got the ball. They've got the ball on the wing, and they're just steaming it down the sideline. I don't know why Jonah Lomu popped into my mind, but definitely glad it did, because I can just imagine like Aotearoa basketball sitting there on the wing, waiting for the ball. All the forwards are doing the hard work. Get the ball. Jonah Lomu down the sideline. That feels a bit like Aotearoa basketball right now. Not only with the Tall Blacks, but everything else that's happening around the Tall Blacks, which you have done a good job covering. I'm throwing up some Dylan Brown watch. Just want to make everyone aware that we are now in Dylan Brown watch. First of all, he's one of my favorite players, so I'm always having a gaze at Dylan Brown, representing Northland to the fullest. With the Parramatta Eels, fantastic season so far. But we have a bit of a situation where Mitchell Moses now looks like he's going to be out injured for a few weeks, and the Eels need to keep winning games to stay in the top 8, get into finals footy, and ideally push for a top 4 spot, which will make everything a bit easier in finals footy. No Mitchell Moses, 22-year-old Dylan Brown in his 4th season, already one of the best young halves in the NRL, starting half for the Aotearoa Kiwis. This is now Dylan Brown watch. What is Dylan Brown going to do without Mitchell Moses? How is he going to steer the Parramatta Eels around? Maybe he's not going to have to do anything. Maybe Jacob Arthur comes in at halfback, he plays well and everything's all good. That's no worries. Dylan Brown will do whatever's asked of him. He's even played centre. I think late last year he played centre for a few games, or earlier this year. He does whatever the Parramatta Eels team requires of him. And I'm curious how that looks moving forward with the Eels needing to win games and Mitchell Moses being out injured. Dylan Brown is fantastic. Fizzing to watch him over the next few weeks with the Parramatta Eels. As we always know, Parramatta Eels, really good Kiwi-NRL, NRL team as well. Statistical glory here, Wildcard. Enlighten us with some números.
Yeah, I've been thinking a fair bit during this Blackcaps European tour. There's lots of limited over stuff, lots of 2020 stuff in particular. It's got me thinking about, like, you know, the all-time records in 2020 international cricket. Because, like, the test numbers are kind of sacred. People know, like, you know, Don Bramman has the best average, or, you know, whoever, Sachin Tendulkar's runs and things like that. Brian Lara's top score. Like, people know these things. They're well known. Trent Bolt, most runs is number 11 for sure. There's, you know, Mutai Muralitharan and the wickets and that kind of thing. Like I say, like, sacred. People know this, and the ODI ones aren't that far behind. But 2020 cricket is young enough at an international level that I just don't. First of all, it takes time for these records to, like, unfold and become relevant. And this is the only format also where the Blackcaps actually play it regularly enough to, like, compete with other teams in terms of aggregate. So it just got me thinking, like, where do some of these Blackcaps actually stand in terms of global, like, all-time career records? So I had a little bit of a peek for some of these 2020 things, and Martin Guptill, unsurprisingly, features quite regularly. He is second only to Rohit Sharma in terms of total career international T20 runs. Sharma has 3,443. Guptill has 3,399. So as it stands, there's less than 50 runs between them heading into another World Cup. So that could change in a hurry. Both going to be playing a lot of cricket. Brendan McCullum is 12th on that list. Ross Taylor is 21st. Jimmy Neesham has a career strike rate of 165. That is 7th all time, but first amongst players with at least 30 2020 international innings. So Jimmy Neesham smacks the ball hard and often and far. Martin Guptill, 5th all time for 50 plus scores. He's got 22 of them. Martin Guptill also 1st overall for total sixes, 169 sixes in 2020 internationals. That's 10 ahead of Rohit Sharma. Colin Munro is 7th on that list, and Brendan McCullum is 14th. Over to some of the bowling stuff. Tim Southey's 2nd all time for wickets. He has 111. Shakib Al Hassan has 121. Also, Ish Sodhi, 94 2020 international wickets. That is 6th all time. That's the 6th most of any bowler in international 2020 cricket. And one more just for fun. Dan Vittori, economy rate 5.70. We're talking about the earlier days of 2020 international cricket here, but that is the 2nd best ever for any bowler with at least 100 overs bowled in the format. RPO of 570 for Dan Vittori. No surprises there. So, yeah, there you go. Some 2020 stats.
Would have definitely enjoyed a bit of Daniel Vittori versus Finn Allen in the Super
Yeah,
Smash. Seddon Park, Basin Reserve. That would have been a fun battle. My stat here, Wildcard, quite simple. Lydia Ko. She has had 5 top 5 finishes in her last 6 tournaments on the LPGA Tour. Lydia Ko is a beast. Onwards to the next one here, Wildcard. Deep in the Mangroves. What have you found? I believe you've found a bit of a lazy football. It's popped. It's in the mangroves, deflated, and you're just searching for the owner. Who is the owner of this football?
I think Chris Wood might be the owner of this football. I think he might have kicked it. He might have popped it, probably taken another penalty, like blasted it through the net and, you know, destroyed the thing. He's just as good of a penalty taker as anyone else in the world. And just throw that out there. I think I've done that as a stat. He's top class. He hasn't missed a penalty in professional football for like 6 years or something. Um, anyway, hopefully he gets a few chances to take a few for Newcastle this season because the Premier League starts this weekend, and that does mean more Chris Wood. When Chris Wood signed for Newcastle January last year, it seemed like a lot of people kind of considered him to be a stopgap measure. Like the Newcastle were battling relegation, they weren't playing very well. Callum Wilson, their star striker, was out injured. So it was like, what do? Well, here's a proven Premier League goal scorer. We'll bring him in. He'll score some goals, avoid relegation, and then sign someone better in the summer. Well, he didn't score many goals. He only scored 2, but his performances were huge in Newcastle, like turning their fortunes around and avoiding relegation and a canter in the end. Although the return of Callum Wilson towards the end of the season did limit his minutes just in the last few weeks. So does beg the question, where does he sit now leading into the new season? So still a couple of weeks of transfer window left, but as it stands, there have been no attacking signings from the Magpies. Like not even strikers, not even like midfielders and stuff. I see they're linked with James Maddison of Leicester at the moment. So there's every chance they add someone before, but it doesn't sound like they're looking for a centre forward. It doesn't sound like they're looking for someone to replace Chris Wood, focusing mostly instead on their backline and goalkeepers. So Wood will be behind Wilson in the pecking order. There's no doubt about that. Wilson's an England international, an extremely good player. Preseason largely confirmed that as well. You see Wilson getting a few more of those first 11 minutes, but you've also seen Callum Wilson getting a bit of like a specialist individual training regime to manage his injury history and be like not wanting to play in big minutes or back-to-back games and things like that. So sure, as it stands, Wilson starts ahead of Wood, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any inkling of like them starting together in a duo or anything like that. It'll be one or the other in the middle of a front three. But Wilson is not going to be a 90-minute guy every week, and he's definitely not going to be a guy who plays like 3 games in a week when the fixtures really cram up. So Chris Wood is going to get his chances a lot more off the bench than we're used to, certainly than what he's been doing in the last few years, but also for a better team than he's been playing for in the last few years. So that's just kind of like, comes with the territory. It's different areas for the Woodsman, but despite the naysayers when he first signed, it looks like he's still very much going to be a part of this Newcastle project over the course of this season, and hopefully scoring a bunch of goals, because when he does play regularly, he does score goals regularly. That's kind of how it goes with Chris Wood. So it's a big season coming up for him, and still got high expectations there.
Fabulous. I'm going deep into the mangroves with some Kiwi-NRL matters. We had a couple of debutants, and I'm going to try freestyle this off the top of the dome. Not looking at my notes, just to see what's possible. Stretch the do a bit of training, mental training, Kiwi-NRL information training here. We had Deine Mariner making his debut for the Brisbane Broncos. Fantastic talent. Done a few yarns about him, talked a bit about him. Just a fantastic young talent from Aotearoa, but he is a Marist Saints junior. And he made his debut alongside Daluis Hoita, playing on the wing for the Brisbane Broncos, also a Marist Saints junior. So we had 2 Marist Saints juniors in the Broncos team. This game also featured 2 Hornby juniors from Christchurch. Jordan Ricky, Hornby junior, playing with the Brisbane Broncos, and Fa'amanu Brown starting at hooker for the Tigers. So you had 2 Marist Saints juniors, one of whom was making his debut, and you had 2 Hornby Panthers juniors from Christchurch. That's pretty awesome. But wait, there's a little bit more. Deine Mariner was starting at centre, and he was playing against Stafford Toa and Asu Kepaoa, who are also from Auckland. Asu Kepaoa played for a bunch of clubs in Auckland and went to Sacred Heart College, so that's kind of his background. Stafford Toas and Mount Wellington Warriors Junior. 3 out of the 4 centres in this game are from Auckland. Let alone just the pure numbers that the Tigers have. Ken Mamalo, Papatoe Panthers Jr., Zane Musgrove, Mangere East Jr., Austin Diaz, Tanifaro Jr., Kaumatualangi, Glenora Bears Jr. Kaumatualangi was fantastic on an edge for the Tigers as well. So my crappy mathematics led me to assess 10 out of 34 players were directly from Aotearoa. And these dudes didn't move to Australia when they were 3 years old and now they're playing NRL. That's 10 out of 34 players who left Aotearoa to play rugby league in Australia and play junior footy in Aotearoa. So that is ridiculous. And that is the Kiwi-NRL takeover live in full effect. But there was another Kiwi-NRL debutant this round as well, wildcard Alfred Smalley, making his debut for the Manly Sea Eagles on the wing. He is a Otahuhu junior, played for the Otahuhu Leopards, as well as playing for Otahuhu College. And the information that I found said that Alfred Smalley was playing first 13 rugby league for Otahuhu College in year 9, his first year of high school. Then his second year of high school, he won Auckland College Rugby League Player of the Year at year 10, his second year of high school. Third year of high school, Otahuhu College won the National Secondary Schools title. And the previous time Otahuhu College won the National Secondary Schools tournament was when Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was playing for Otahuhu College. So Alfred Smalley's record with Otahuhu College is bonkers. He is an absolute winner because when he went to Manly Sea Eagles to play under-20s, Manly Sea Eagles under-20s won the old Holden Cup NYC tournament competition. So Alfred Smalley won the National Secondary Schools tournament as one of the best players in Aotearoa at Otahuhu College. Then he goes to Manly Sea Eagles. He wins the under-20s competition. In that final, Manly Sea Eagles played against Parramatta Eels, where Dylan Brown was starting at halfback for the Parramatta Eels. And to the best of my knowledge, that was in the same year that Dylan Brown had won the SG Ball championship with the Parramatta Eels earlier in the year. So at that time, SG Ball was under 18, under 20s was under 20s. So Dylan Brown won the SG Ball championship, and then he went into under 20s and he took the under 20s to a grand final where they lost to Alfred Smalley and Otahuhu and Manly Sea Eagles. There's another connection here. When Otahuhu College won that National Secondary Schools tournament with Alfred Smalley in their team, they defeated Whangarei Boys High School that had at least, this is only from try scorers. This wasn't a full team list or a squad. So someone like Paul Turner might have been playing, I don't know. But two dudes scored tries in that game for Whangarei Boys High School. Dylan Brown and Wiramu Greg, both who are now playing NRL footy for the Parramatta Eels. Didn't have to look at my notes there. I'm pretty proud of that one. But there was plenty of Kiwi-NRL wrinkles from those games. And let's go a step further here, Wildcard, because I have one stat just about Dylan Brown, just to help lay things out better. And we're deep in the mangroves, so we always get a bit weird here. Dylan Brown has more try assists this season than the previous 3 seasons combined. 13 try assists this season and 12 try assists in his first 3 years combined. He's got 7 tries this year, and he's scored 4 tries in each of his first 3 years. So he's scored more tries, almost double this year than his best markers from the previous 3 years, and he has absolutely blown away his try assist numbers. Interesting. question time here, Wildcard. We're just going to each share our Commonwealth Games highlights so far. What is your hard and fast Commonwealth Games highlight from the first 4 or 5 days?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a bit on the Patreon thing. I haven't been as hyped for the Com Games as I normally would have. I don't know why. I think maybe it's just it feels like we've outgrown it a little bit when you look at the fact that it's not like the context is very different when you're only inviting Commonwealth nations. Like, and this definitely applies to the dude I want to talk about. But Lewis Clareburt getting 2 golds in the pool. I think there was the 400-meter medley and I think 200 butterfly. I think it might have been. Which the second one he just sort of entered because he was there and he's like, well, I've got time in the schedule. Let me in. Yeah, sweet. Okay, I'll win the whole thing. That's from him. Like, he's setting personal bests in both of those. He's fantastic. He's still got one more event to go as well, the 200 medley. Like, it's been incredible to watch him do that. It also feels like this is the thing about the Com Games, though, isn't it? It's like this isn't the pinnacle of the sport. But it does feel like a major stepping stone for him as to be able to take this kind of performance when you're setting personal best there and go into hopefully, Olympics in a couple years time and world champs probably in between then and there. Like, this hopefully feels like a stepping stone moment for Lewis Clareburt as a like world-class swimmer. This isn't the peak, but this is a step towards the peak where he's hopefully heading. So he's been the highlight for myself. What about yourself?
It was a niggly highlight, but it was a highlight nonetheless. The Black Sticks men first game against Scotland. I think they were down like 4-0 at one stage, and then it got to like 5-1 against Scotland, and it was diabolical. Like, what the fuck is Scotland doing scoring that many goals? Obviously, a bit of a Scottish crowd there close to home. They've got a lot of energy. Kiwis are a bit slow on their first game, not quite as sharp as they'd want to be. It was diabolical. It was absolutely ridiculous. Scotland winning, they're scoring goals easily, kind of borderline disgusting defense from the Kiwis. Second half, the Kiwis bounce back and they score 4 goals to get it to 5-5. And then the Kiwis also miss a bunch of chances to win the game. So I think it finished 5-5 as a draw, and the Kiwis could have very easily have lost that game in diabolical fashion, as well as winning that game and pretending as if nothing happened. In the end, they got a draw, so it was kind of like not the best of both worlds, but both worlds were present. And just the range of those, I think it was like a Saturday morning, waking up, having some coffee, and just rolling through the range of feelings and emotions, like shitting the bed in the first half, like what the fuck is happening? And then you get back into the contest and you make it a fantastic game, but then you don't win the game when you could also win the game. Not necessarily a highlight, but definitely a fun Commonwealth Games moment. They did manage to beat Pakistan, but they got smoked by Australia this morning. Black Sticks women are trucking along pretty nicely. They play Australia next, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any bigger ramifications from that performance for the Black Sticks men. But yeah, as far as like Commonwealth Games hockey entertainment goes, the whole thing was fun. Like, sure, it sucked and it was diabolical there for a moment, but it was fun to see that diabolicalness as well. Second question to you, Wildcard. You've been posting a few highlights from this lad. You've been sharing a bit of information about him. I've got no idea who he is, so I'm curious, Wildcard, who is Kiwi footballer Max Mata?
Yeah, I'm trying to think how old he would be. Probably 22, 23 years old. He's a centre forward. He I first saw him first watched him play properly at the under-17 World Cup a few years back, when it was, his cycle, and he was still in the Wellington Phoenix Academy at that point. He was playing centre forward in this team, and I remember distinctly watching it being like, he's the best guy on the park. Like this is the best player in this team, this whatever wave this is. And I have to look back and see like who else was in that, because there's obviously guys who would have developed a bit slower and whatever. There would have been some great players in that team, but Max Mata was the guy who stood out at the time. His career has been really wild since then. Like for someone as young as he is, he's also been to a lot of different places. He moved to Switzerland to play for Grasshopper Zurich, where he never really played for the first team, I don't think. Although he was briefly joined for about a season there by Nando Peinecker, who also, when played for the same team, did play once or twice for the first team, but then moved to Portugal. Whereas Max Mata's time was spent mostly, like the best stuff that he did while he was in Switzerland was actually spent on loan in Estonia for a team called Nomi Kajlu, where he scored a lot of goals. Like he scored a lot of goals out on loan for them, actually played a Champions League qualifier, early round qualifier against Celtic. So very early in his professional career, got to play an away game in Scotland against Celtic with a massive crowd. So that's, a great experience. However, never really got through at Zurich, who got relegated around the similar time. And he left and played went and played a year in America in the sort of second tier USL level at Real Monarchs, where he played alongside Kyle Adams, I think, another Kiwi in that team. But Mata never really got much of a chance there. He only scored a couple goals all season, mostly played off the bench just for whatever reason. Yet another example of a Kiwi footballer not being recognized to their potential by American, the football establishment, the soccer establishment. There seems to be a lot of those stories where maybe their scouting isn't as good as they think. I don't know. Or just there's a priority on homegrown players as well there. And some of those is another one. So he had a bad time of it there, like a year where he didn't really achieve much. Moves to Sligo Rovers in Ireland. Not long after he moves to Sligo Rovers in Ireland, his old mate Nando Peinecker played with at Zurich, and also I believe they made their all white debuts in the same game. I think it was either against Ireland or against Lithuania. One of Danny Hay's first tour in charge, and Peinecker's gone on to become a regular. Mata's not played. I don't know if he's played since. He's probably been one or two squads since then, but he certainly hasn't been. He wasn't in the picture more recently, but I think he will be soon, because at Sligo Rovers in Ireland, he's finally really clicked. Like he's earned his way into a starting gig. Scored 5 or 6 goals already this season, a few more assists. He just last week scored a crucial goal in a European Conference League knockout, Conference League qualifying second leg. Scored the clinching goal in stoppage time coming off the bench. First time that Sligo Rovers have ever won consecutive European ties in the same season as well. He also scored in their first round qualifier. He's just before that second leg game, against Motherwell of Scotland, he's got given a 2.5-year contract extension to keep him there until the end of 2024, I think it is. So pretty much things just gone, rather swell for him. He's finally found, it's one of those situations in football where it doesn't always come around on schedule or when you expect it, but when you find a situation where you're like valued and you're playing regularly and your style fits there, and it's a beautiful thing to see, and that's what he's got there at the moment at Sligo Rovers. So hopefully plenty more all whites caps to come, and et cetera, et cetera. I have a quick question to throw back, or unless you want to add something there.
Well, I just checked. Max Mata is Cook Island Māori, so
there you go.
There's a decent, Aotearoa football. Bill Tuiloma, the also Samoan footballer, Max Mata, and I think his older brother Ben Mata has played for the Cook Islands internationally as well. So shout out to Aotearoa's Polynesian footballers. Your question.
For sure. And shout out to our Hong Kong cricketers as well, because I got just a quick question here, like a little pub quiz type thing. Because Mark Chapman obviously scored 100 for Hong Kong back in the day in an ODI, scored 100 for the Blackcaps in an ODI against Scotland just a couple of days ago. The third player, he is the third player in ODI history to have scored 100 for 2 different nations. Can you name the other 2?
Ryan Tenduscarter.
Good guess, but no.
Oh, that's the only one I could think of.
Right. Well, the two guys both interestingly, or maybe not interestingly, but both went the same journey. Like they're both from the same country, played for the country of their birth, and then moved to a different country, which was the same country that they both moved to. Similar ages, similar era. Um,
Oh, I'm picking up some Zimbabwe, England.
oh, you're actually half right. One of those countries is right. We're talking sort of like 2010 range era here.
Enlighten
Any
us.
last guess? No. One is Ed Joyce, and the other one is Owen Morgan.
Oh. Yeah, the Irish.
Yeah, the Irish to England
It is like we can't talk here in Aotearoa because we do get a lot of cricketers from Africa. But the old English, they do
and
love
Asia.
they do love the old Scottish cricketer, the old Irish cricketer. Like, hey, you're from a country near us, just come play for us.
It's almost the same thing. Come captain our ODI team.
Musical jam here, wildcard. We will finish with some fabulous music. There's a new album from Domo Genesis. He's teamed up with Evidence. That is a fantastic, like mellow hip hoppy, underground hip hoppy type of vibe. And also, big shout out to Karma Humble. He is from Christchurch, I believe, and he's got a new project, very similar to an artist I referred to a few episodes ago, Te Kura Huia, where it's quite dance hally and it's quite funky, quite different, but it's also Te Kura Huia has a lot of Māori influence on her music. Karma Humble has a lot of Samoan Polynesian influence on his music, but it's not like hip hop. It's quite, just funky and upbeat and very wavy as well. So I'm loving those pockets of music. Wildcard, what have you been listening to?
New single by Phaser Days. Loved her first album a couple years ago, and it's been way too long waiting for something else to come out. Just like light breezy Kiwi pop rocky type areas, I suppose. Just like real emphasis on the breeziness there. Love her stuff. Its new song is cool. And yeah, it's been too long. Other than that, new Ty Segall. What else can I say? New Ty Segall album. I've just been churning through that one. It's called Hello High, and it's a very not fully acoustic, but mostly acoustic thing from him. Lots of not so many electric guitars or loud pumping beats and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a throwback to one of my favorite albums from his back catalog called Sleeper, which one of the first ones that I listened to and loved. Yeah, bit of a throwback to that. So good old Ty Segall. He always does something different every time he releases something. So it's always a journey to listen to and to discover and etc. etc.
That is the Niche Cage Variety Show for this week. We will be back with a monster Niche Cast episode on Thursday, so stay tuned. Kia kaha, stay beautiful. Raise your mana, Māori ora. Choo-choo!